Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Silva Braga. We have some breaking news out of Washington. Former Trump campaign aide George Papadopoulos has been sentenced to 14 days in jail and a year of parole. A judge handed down the sentence today in federal court after Papadopoulos pleaded guilty last year to lying to investigators with the Mueller probe about his contacts with Russians. They included a man who offered, quote, dirt on Hillary Clinton. Now, the former aide's defense team claims then-candidate Trump knew about the meetings and approved of them. Right before the sentencing, Papadopoulos told the judge, quote, I made a dreadful mistake, but I am a good man. Papadopoulos is now the fourth member of the president's campaign team to be sentenced or plead guilty in connection with the Russia investigation and meddling in the 2016 election. We have CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman on the phone. Rikki, 14 days in jail doesn't sound that stiff a sentence. Is that right or not?
You are correct. It is very light indeed. The prosecution was looking for the full 6 months, which was in the plea agreement, and even the full 6 months as a maximum was considered light. The lawyers for George Papadopoulos were looking for no time in jail whatsoever, and they felt that he was showing remorse and that he had cooperated. The government, on the other hand, felt that he really never cooperated because everything that he gave the government came as a result of the government's first arrest and its own seizure of text messages, emails, and the like. In addition, George Papadopoulos held on to his cell phone that he didn't tell the government about. So he is a very lucky young man today indeed.
So the judge apparently siding with the defense's explanation. Can you kind of remind us a bit, can you put Papadopoulos in context in this broader investigation?
Yes, of course. What had happened, because you have to remember that Papadopoulos is actually the first domino to fall, not only in terms of Robert Mueller and getting guilty pleas or indictments, but really in terms of the Russia investigation. Apparently, George Papadopoulos at one time told an Australian diplomat that he had had a conversation with people, and it turned out to be a professor, who might be able to deliver the Russians who could deliver dirt on Hillary Clinton. And that is actually where the collusion investigation began. So he really is either the first domino or the first piece moved on the chessboard. So what ultimately happened, says the government, is because George Papadopoulos lied to them initially and only fessed up later on when confronted by the government, that the government missed its opportunity to be able to question this Maltese professor when he was in the United States. And the government missed him because the government didn't know about him. So by the time the government knew about him, he was out of the country. So they looked at George Papadopoulos in the context of the whole idea of Russian collusion as where they had the right to begin this investigation. And you have to remember, this is before Robert Mueller. This is at the time of James Comey.
Right. And apparently, specifically, what Papadopoulos lied about was whether he was part of the Trump campaign when he had that meeting with the professor. He conceded to having the meeting. But now this light sentence, does it have any significance for the progress of the investigation and how other defendants or potential defendants might consider their options?
I don't think so, only for this reason. You have 14 days in jail, 1 year probation. I don't exactly expect George Papadopoulos to go violate his year of probation. He's not someone who is going to go rob a bank tomorrow or do anything untoward, though certain things have surprised me from time to time. But the reality is this. One of the things we know in the world of the law is that different judges have different standards of sentencing. So what may be a light sentence by this particular judge If he had gone before a different judge in a different court, it might have been a much heavier sentence. If we look at the only other popular, that is in the popular culture where people will know about a sentence of someone who fibbed to the government and then as a result was indicted, or in this case, an information, capital I, was filed against George Papadopoulos, we can look at Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart wound up lying to the SEC when she went down for an interview. She was given what many considered a light sentence, which was 5 months in jail and then 5 months home confinement. This, of course, is far lighter. Whether this has any influence on any judge, for example, who would be sentencing Paul Manafort in the Eastern District of Virginia, or whether Paul Manafort is convicted ultimately in Washington, D.C., different judges, different courts, different charges. People should not think that if they run to the courthouse, they're getting 14 days.
In terms of there being different types of charges, there's maybe two different things that potential defendants here have to worry about. One is whatever meddling they may have done, and the other is, as it often is in these cases, the cover-up. And Papadopoulos' own lawyer said, I think it was today, the President of the United States hindered this investigation more than George Papadopoulos could have. Can you talk a bit about that line between what may have happened at the time in terms of any possible meddling and collusion and what's been happening since in terms of any possible cover-up and the legal implication or the legal jeopardy that puts certain people in?
What we often find is that the cover-up is worse than the crime. It's happened since time immemorial that, that you may wind up doing a crime, but you exacerbate the situation by lying about it, by getting rid of physical evidence, by doing things that then are what we call consciousness of guilt, that your cover-up, it really becomes what aggravates the government no end, as it should, because once you're caught, the idea is that at that point, or even not even once you're caught, once you have done something wrong, it is bad enough and you should be punished. But once you go to other extremes to cover up what you did, then you're really asking to get a much heavier sentence, which, of course, did not occur here. Which brings us, of course, to the whole question of whether or not Donald Trump should go in and speak to federal agents and under the special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation.
And quickly, on that point, if you were his lawyer, what would you tell him?
Over my dead body would he go in. As a criminal defense lawyer, we used to have a motto, and it said only a fish would get caught if it didn't keep its mouth shut. So you're right there, where Donald Trump, as we know, has some difficulty in saying the same thing at 9 a.m. as he says at noon. So going into the lion's den, that is the den of the special counsel, is really an act that no lawyer would countenance.
Papadopoulos went into the lion's den. He lied, apparently, and today sentenced to 14 days in prison, a year probation. Rikki Klieman, thanks for your analysis.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back with more of the day's news. You're streaming CBSN. Always on.